Not many of my subscribers actually remember that Minecraft used to be a survival game more so than an adventure RPG. Here are some ways in which the survival aspects of Minecraft have been dumbed down to suit a wider range of audience. There are two aspects in which the nighttime of Minecraft has been made easier and pretty much trivialized completely. One of them is simply making the night brighter. Whilst it's true that you can set the brightness to be lower, many players now have the ability to choose not to. Even if you set the darkest option, the truth is Minecraft in pre-beta 1.8 was a much darker game by default due to the lighting differences. Even though this technically doesn't have an effect on your gameplay, the psychological effect was that you stayed home in your base, and if you didn't have a base, you built one at the earliest convenient moment possible on your first day. An even worse culprit for the weakening of the night, as you all know, is beds. You no longer need to even worry about nighttime when you can right-click on an extremely cheap item and it will set time to be day, like a creative mode command almost. Beds disrupted the circadian rhythm of Minecraft. You no longer had to go out and, for instance, gather food over the day and improve your base or dig underground at night. You could just do everything in permanent daytime. Initially, there were some efforts to weaken beds. If there were dark blocks around you, you had a nightmare, meaning a zombie or skeleton spawned on top of you. And nowadays you just simply can't sleep with hostile mobs around you, but even this can be circumvented pretty easily by moving the bed a couple of blocks over. So that mechanic doesn't even work, because as long as a monster is not leashing or following you, you can just use the bed anyways. If you are enjoying the video so far, please press the like button and comment something like "Ugh" to increase the chances of the algorithm finding this video. My YouTube channel only makes a fraction of the amount of money I need to survive, so any little helps. Let's not also forget about phantoms. This will sound weird, but the phantoms actually made the beds even more overpowered. How could this be? Well, before phantoms, the player could just decide not to use beds to make the default game more difficult. And nowadays, however, you will probably go out of your way to make a bed just to escape those pesky phantoms and their annoying cries. I don't want to lie to you and say that every single change has dumbed down the game so far. In beta 1.8, hunger was introduced, and since the combat update, you can no longer spam click your weapons. However, other combat elements were introduced to dumb down the game further. Axes can now be used as weapons, and to be honest, they are better at vanquishing 3 out of the 4 most common early hostile NPCs than swords are. However, shields were added to trivialize combat almost completely. Back in the old days, you could right-click with your swords to parry, taking half as much damage as you normally would. This was bad, but shields completely negate all damage from the front-facing direction as long as you hold down right-click. Whilst I think shields are necessary because skeletons were made too powerful, there's really no other reason to have such overpowered defense options for such a cheap cost. One of the more disappointing ways the survival aspect of the game was trivialized was the introduction of free food items everywhere. I remember returning to the game after a hiatus, and now there were berries everywhere in the taiga biome. Waters were teeming with infinitely respawning fish, and of course, villages were added a long time ago, and the player has not been punished for pillaging the crop stockpiles ever since. 10 years ago, I modded my game to make surviving more difficult. The hunger bar drained much faster, and it drained even while standing still. Food restored a fraction of the hunger, as the base game does nowadays, and you needed to eat different kinds of food, otherwise eating the same food over and over again restored almost no hunger. As soon as you spawned in on the first day, you needed to go out into the world and find wild seeds from Pam's Harvest Craft and grow all kinds of different food for the next year so that you could combine them into more elaborate food like burgers and shakes. These meals required flour for the dough, milk to make into cheese, animal meats, and even fruit trees. All crops withered over the winter, and even throughout the year, just as easily as you could freeze or overheat, so could your crops. You needed to maintain a steady temperature for your crops by moving into a temperate biome at first, and planting around meticulously placed lava pools so your crops didn't freeze over the night. Now, all of this sounds super difficult and tedious, and you know what? It was awesome. You progress almost every single year, and the end goal was achieved only after dozens of hours of playtime, when you built up enough of a seed collection to create those elaborate meals. In actual Minecraft, you would never die out of hunger. You can stand still or move 2 blocks over and you are tripping over food. Paradoxically, when the game is so easy, it becomes more tedious to gather food, so most people just set up farming contraptions so they don't have to worry about food for the rest of the game. You might as well turn off hunger at that point. Sprinting is another mechanic that makes the game less difficult. A little bit. I like the mechanic itself, I'm glad it's there, but sprinting trivializes a couple other features that we will talk about later. When you could only walk, spiders could keep up, making them a sort of unique enemy that could climb walls or catch up to you. But since sprinting was added, you could leave almost all enemies in the dust. Being underwater is a frustrating part of almost every video game. You are incentivized not to be there because you are not only slower, but you also die if you remain there for too long. I'm glad they added ways so we can move more freely underwater, but was it necessary to make it better than moving on land? Especially if you combine fast swimming and pressing the spacebar, you can swim up to the surface in 2 seconds, which doesn't even make any sense. Your eardrums should explode. I know I use this word a lot in this video, but this trivializes potions and underwater breathing upgrades. Sprinting underwater, or I guess fast swimming underwater, is really damn fast. The only reason it's not discussed at length is because boats have become very overpowered too. Boats are extremely fast and cost almost nothing to make. They weren't really more balanced back in the day, they were just much more unusable because they broke on lily pads and pretty much everything. Whilst I'm glad that this doesn't happen anymore, shouldn't boats be weaker? I mean, they should definitely drain hunger when you are rowing at max speed, but the best thing would be a line of ship upgrades. You could perhaps craft better ships with more materials as time went on. However, I hesitate to say these things because the children in the community would not like it if I said that the best craftable ship should be as good as the normal boats are right now. No way, I just got Frostwalker boots. What is this seed, dude? So, never mind, I no longer need boats either. The biggest reason why Minecraft is getting dumbed down each update is the community itself. I remember one time I made a mod that made beds have a more expensive recipe. You needed a stack of wool just to make your first bed, which I thought was a cool game mechanic because it incentivized creating a sheep farm. I remember the one kid commenting on my post saying, "Why did you make the bed recipe harder rather than cheaper?" Most players in the community actually want to make the game easier rather than more difficult. One of my favorite things to build in Minecraft is a railway system connecting multiple bases. It's just a good incentive to keep on playing, to mine as much iron for the tracks and gold for the booster tracks as you can possibly gather. Horses were added, which pretty much instantly deprecated minecarts. You see, I don't have to use the word trivialized in every single paragraph. Obviously, horses are a pain in the donkey to use on water, but it's still much easier to craft a leash and drag your horse with you with the super overpowered boat you have than it is to gather materials for the railway, and you have to build a bridge anyways for that. Not to mention, you can go anywhere by boat and horse, unlike the location you destined for your minecart. Elytras are one of the saddest things added to Minecraft. Whilst I'm glad they are an endgame item and you can use phantoms to repair them, Elytras completely deprecate both minecarts and horses. Elytras are not even the problem by themselves, it's the fact that you can gain height with fireworks. Maybe if Elytras could only glide down, you would be forced to build these bird person towers to travel and glide them down. Maybe then horses and minecarts would have their uses. But even then, minecarts would still need to be buffed. I mean, for crying out loud. Like I said, almost every aspect of survival Minecraft has been gutted over the years. Fuel for furnaces is no exception. In the cradle of the game's history, you pretty much had to go and dig underground the first day, otherwise you would be sitting in darkness in your base because you couldn't make torches your first night. Charcoal was added, so you never even have to go underground anymore. But recently, fallen leaves were added, which inspired me to make this entire video. Fallen leaves are reminiscent of when they added berries to the game. Suddenly, everything is at your feet. Not just free food, but free fuel as well. I like that the charcoal is a thing, don't get me wrong, and that you can craft coal blocks to more efficiently use your fuel. But maybe charcoal could have been made weaker than coal. But fallen leaves? I mean, it was already pretty easy to gather fuel. Why was it necessary to make it even easier? No joke, whilst I'm recording this footage for the video, I spawned in, I found leaves, I found stone, and I found iron. Just 2 feet from spawn. Finally, let's talk about a new feature that, although makes the game easier, it might not be a bad thing, but let me know. So, Death Compass, or Recovery Compass, is a craftable item that points you to your last death location. At first, I was gonna write that I actually like this addition to the game, but the more I think about it, the less I like it. You can already use beds to save your spawn location, and I think it's a good risk versus reward mechanic that the player is supposed to build safe bases along the way on their adventures in case they die. Otherwise, they should suffer the consequences for not taking such precautions, right? Now, whilst you can't save your spawn in the Nether, you can still create new portals, and I just don't think the death compasses were added purely for the end zone. That's it for the video. If you enjoyed, please press the like button and comment, "Ugh." What other ways was Minecraft dumbed down over the years? And do you like these changes, Kevin? This has been Two Siders. See you in the next one. Bye bye.